And welcome into another edition of the Garbage Goal podcast powered by Orlando Lacrosse Report. As always, covering all things Florida boys and men's lacrosse. I'm Patrick Moore, along with my co-host Colin Turner. And today we've got a special guest with us. We've got Mr. Nick Beattie with us, which we're super excited to have him along with us
Let's
today.
go.
So thank you, Nick. Nick has had a high school career, a college career, and him and Colin go way back. He's also a Central Florida boy, and so we're excited to have him on the show today. So, Nick, thanks for joining us, man. We appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and for those that don't know Nick, he wasn't that good of a player in Winter Park, even though he did look up to me as his playing career in high school. But to give a little background on Nick, 2016 graduate Winter Park High School, was an All-American in 2016, then went way, I would say, outside the most scope of most students in Florida. He went all the way to California to attend Cal, where he graduated 2020 in the COVID year, but before that was an All-American in 2019. And he did come back in what, people call it summering or taking the year off. He decided to coach with us at Winter Park for a couple seasons where he completely tutored all of our goalies, defense, things like that. But more importantly, if you're ever on Jeopardy and you get Nick Beattie as this fact, Nick Beattie play in the smallest country in the world in the 2018 World Cup games? The answer,
Yes, he
Nick,
did
would
play for
be
them.
yes, Luxembourg. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But what we're real excited to talk to Nick about, and we'll let him talk here in a moment, is his transition from Central Florida High School lacrosse to make the decision to go all the way out west. Had opportunity to play some D3, probably D2 if he wanted to, but chose to go to the MCLA. And for everyone that's out there who doesn't know what the MCLA is, but you're a Florida lacrosse person, it's University of Florida. It's Florida State, teams like that play in the club. And Nick will talk a lot about that because it is for the love of the game, truly. So again, Nick, really excited to have you on. And why don't we just start with you going from high school to Cal? Like, tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. So I could probably start from even a little before that. I started playing lacrosse in like fourth grade, was playing every sport under the sun. Somewhere around middle school, I started realizing that one, lacrosse was the best sport, and two, I was the best at it. I was terrible at all the other sports. So I quit everything else. Um, it really quickly became a dream of mine to get recruited to play like UNC, UVA, Syracuse, Maryland, all those big guys. Doing that from Florida, doing that from Central Florida, especially back then, was damn near impossible unless your last name is Bernhardt. So me and my family tried to get me recruited as soon as we could. So from like seventh or eighth grade on, I was part of like Team Florida. I was doing everything I could to try to get out somewhere. Um, and the other thing I was also focusing on was doing really well in the classroom. I didn't want my grades to be a reason why I couldn't go somewhere. And if it was someplace like Athens or UNC, or dude, you need kick-ass grades to get in there. So we started.
Hold on, Nick. I got to stop you there to make sure because it just popped in my head when he said, not only is Nick an amazing athlete, valedictorian at Winter Park, and to truly tell you how much of a lacrosse goon that he is, wore his lacrosse helmet during his valedictorian speech. So if you didn't like him in the 37 seconds I let him talk, you like him now. So go ahead and continue with
We
your
need
story.
video of that. We got to get video.
Oh, I've got a
of that.
picture of it. I
haven't
100%
seen
have
it.
a picture of it. We can put it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Nick. Continue.
I'll say that. No, yeah. Okay. I'll say also caveat to valedictorian. It was one of like 23 valedictorians. All you needed was an unweighted GPA of 4.0. It doesn't mean as much. I was in class rank. I was like 50.
Hey, raise your hand if you're. Raise your hand if you're a valedictorian. Hold on. Yeah. Raise your hand if you're a valedictorian on this podcast. I'm not raising my hand. Patrick's not raising his hand. Yeah. So continue.
Not happening.
All right. Yeah. All right. So yeah, the point of what I was saying is I really wanted to get recruited, and I sent out a recruiting tape after my sophomore season. I sent it out to all the big schools. I had no business doing that. I was not good enough to do that. I was probably like 5'8", like a buck 30, had some of the worst form you could ever imagine. But I remember I got one good email back from Princeton that said, if you get in here on your own accord, you could have a walkout spot. So that was probably my number one, like my highest rated school that was interested in me at some point.
Wow.
Otherwise, I think Jacksonville was interested in me at some points throughout high school. Tampa was interested. Towson was interested for a little bit. RPI was interested for a little bit. But I bring this all up to say that all these schools were cool. They were all on the map of like D1 to D3, I think. And I was considering it. There were a lot of reasons why I wouldn't really want to go up to the Northeast because it was going to be really freaking cold. And also but what it came down to at the end was most or all of these schools were nowhere near good enough academically for me to want to go to it. So I really wanted to play lacrosse, but I really wanted to go to a good school and be sort of like, I don't know if rewarded is the right word, but I worked pretty fucking hard in school in high school to get really good grades, and I wanted that to be realized in what college I went to.
That's awesome.
Um, so every summer was spent traveling. Every summer was spent trying to get recruited, going up the East Coast, going to Delaware, going to hotbeds. One of the worst tournaments in the country. Just by the way, I hope it's not going on anymore. It's like 120 degrees every summer. But one summer we came back and I got an email from Coach Coach Webster. I almost deleted it because I thought it was like a phishing scam. But something told me to like go out to the living room and tell my parents, I was like, hey, who's this guy? What's Cat? Where's Cat? Why is this coach interested in me? What he said he saw me at some time. Like, should I just delete this? This seems fake. And they both sort of sat there and looked at me and made me go back in and respond to his email immediately. I ended up going out for a recruiting trip in my senior fall in 2015, I guess. And I fell in love and came back and was like, Mom, Dad, I need to go here. Then I guess one thing led to another, and I applied and got in. And then the rest is sort of history after that.
Wow.
So the thing that I want to make sure we touch on that people don't understand about what's going on with NCAA lacrosse versus what you've experienced with MCLA, which is essentially club lacrosse. That's what everybody calls it, right? So there's some things happening here that parents, you need to listen to this and understand this, and players too. There are less than 100 men's Division I lacrosse programs in the country, period, right? Now, they've added a couple here and there, but it is at a snail's pace. That is mostly based upon two things: finances and Title IX. And Title IX is the equality amendment that basically allows there to be the same amount of opportunity for women as there is men. And quite frankly, if you're a football school, football swallows up most of the scholarships. And so you've got to offset that with a lot of women's sports, which is what you see at a lot of the big football schools that actually do have men's lacrosse or don't have it. Because I've always joked, and Colin, I've talked about this, if Florida or Florida State, or even UCF for that matter, ever got NCAA men's lacrosse as a Division I sport, they would win a national championship in 5 years, guaranteed. They would win.
Yeah, I agree.
They would recruit every kid from New Jersey, Long Island, Virginia, bring them down here in January. Everybody's wearing shorts and T-shirts and flip-flops. There's girls walking around in shorts and T-shirts, and they're going to go, boom, I'm in. But anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. So you have to, so parents and players, everybody listening, you got to understand that there's a very small pool of opportunity. And the fact that you had the opportunity to even try to get into Princeton and you could have walked on is like huge, because that's the percentage of that is so small in men's lacrosse. But what I want us to talk about, Nick, is I want to talk about like the experience you had in club lacrosse, the fun you had, the competitiveness. Because I'm telling you, what we're seeing now with the transfer portal is you're seeing kids that played club lacrosse at, Liberty University or Cal or one of these schools, or Florida State, and they're transferring to an NCAA Division I program and playing, or a Division II program, and they're studs. So walk us through a little bit in your experience what that difference was like for you specifically at Cal. How competitive was it? Was it not competitive? Was it like where would you rank that in what you see versus Division I lacrosse?
Yeah, I can get into that. I think it's also important to note that the distinction you made between club lacrosse and NCAA lacrosse is really important. It's NCAA here, but it's not just MCLA. There's actually another club league. It's called, I think, the NCLL. You can think of the two club leagues as being those schools that have MCLA teams are those schools that do not have a counterpart NCAA Division I team or other division. In other words, Duke has a NCAA team that we all know and love. They also have a club team. Cal would never play the Duke club team. They don't play in the MCLA. They play in the NCAA. That's another important thing. So there's just a huge range of club, and there's a huge range of club experiences. I went to Cal. It's been a perennial top 20 at least team since the year before I got there to now. And the way that it was advertised, the coach would advertise it to us and to his recruits would be that the commitment that you have to have in the off season and during the season is around 2/3 that of what you can expect of a D1 program. I say that with the fact that we were of the MCLA teams, probably one of the highest commitment programs. We probably asked some of the most out of our players and out of just everyone on our staff than almost any other program. The biggest reason being our coach was full time. We were paying him a full salary, which is a crazy thing to do at the club level. But Cal didn't have another D1 sport, another D1 men's lacrosse team, and they have a huge alumni system, and a really invested alumni system, and they wanted us to do well. But I got there in 2016. 2017 was an amazing year. I was on a team of 48 guys. I was one of 5 goalies. I was a backup for the first time I'd ever been on any team. And it was one of the most fun years of lacrosse I've ever had. In the fall, we had 3 days of practice a week, and the other 2 days were lifting, and we couldn't get access to the gym. So we had this guy called Red, and we would go work out. He was Coach Rutherford, and he has all these little sayings, squeeze every ounce out of the orange. You got to build the Great Wall of China one freaking time. And we would go work out in the parking garage, like 5 levels down, so no one would screw with us. And we'd blare like just awful trap music in these really loud speakers.
I don't even know what that is.
We'd be doing planks on like concrete and doing push-ups. We would like push his car up and down the ramps of the parking garage just for fun, just because like that senior class was so committed and so engaged, and it was awesome. It didn't feel like work. It didn't feel like, oh, I can't believe I got to do this. It was like some of the most fun you could have. I had a freshman class of like 18 people, and we all loved it. But
so of all the guys you played with, though, would you say that most of the guys were probably the better player or the best player on their team in high school that played with you at Cal?
Yeah, I would say we had so there's a huge range of club sports. Like the club program at Cal is way different than like the club program at like USF, for example. USF and Cal are probably at 2 giant different ends of the spectrum. Maybe USF's different now, but at Cal is mostly guys that were some of the best teams on the high school team. But you could also just have guys that were walking on just to be like glue guys, just to be like fun to be around. It just wanted to hang out. But we cut a lot of people.
And I was about to say, that's a big difference. And Patrick kind of laid it out. You talked about the club. This is not a school-run organization. This is run by a board of players that does all of this. So talk a little bit about that. I know other MCLA could be different, but for the most part, they're run this way.
Yeah, every school, I think, and every team does it a little differently, but the principle of club sports remains that it is player-run and player-owned, in essence. The way that we did it, we had a president, we had a vice president, we had like 2 other positions, and we had a huge alumni board. So they were the big groups were the players, the player leaders, the coaches, the alumni board, and then the school overseeing everything. I was able to be president my junior year after being VP the year before. The way that worked is I think I technically owned the team. I ran our operating budget of $250,000 plus. I could have hired and fired all of our coaches if I wanted to. I had to deal and interface directly with the school. That junior year spring, where we made it all the way to the national championship game, I was in the office of the school admin every day trying to make sure that we got like the right field space. Had all the travel things, had all the admin things like buttoned up. Because if we didn't, and if I wasn't able to do this, they could take away our team. They could take away our program if they really wanted to. So it's a really unique experience because if you're an NCAA team, you're not going to be involved at all with the admin. You're going to
No,
show up when
you get a schedule every week, and you're told where to go, where to be there, when to eat. There's no, you're not in charge of making sure the balls are out there, making sure the field's lined. There's none of the goals are out there. That's totally different experience. And I actually love that experience for you, and that the real world experience that came with that for you and the other guys that had those responsibilities. That's huge. I mean, little known fact, I actually ran the campus radio station at Western Carolina my junior and senior year. And so I actually, but it was, I did change the format of the radio station to an actual good format, which was awesome. It was the best thing I ever did. But that's another story. But I did the same thing you did. I had a budget. I had to go get checks cut. I had to secure equipment. I had to hire and fire the DJs. I had to pick, all that stuff. And by the time I got done with school and I got my first real job in broadcast, I knew like 75% of what I was supposed to be doing to run this place. So I think that's such a great experience for you. Let's talk about this for a second because I'm kind of curious. I mean, it's almost like you had your own fraternity. Like you guys were like a fraternity, right? I mean, it's kind of that feel. Like you got leadership, you got some oversight, but you can kind of create your own thing without somebody having their thumb on you all the time.
Yes, I will say I said it immediately once I stepped on campus and pretty much every year afterwards. If I didn't have the team, I don't know if I would have stayed at Cal for years. I think the guys I met there were my tightest friends, or still my tightest friends. Some of my tightest friends to this day. It is a fraternity. The hierarchy is so obvious: the seniors, the juniors, and then the sophomores, and not the freshmen, the rookies. We're not called freshmen; we're rooks. And we're meant to do all the tasks that you need to. You got to carry the balls back and forth. You got to do everything. There's like some, not initiation stuff, but there's some good activities to get you ingratiated with the older guys. One of the most fun things that we get to do is we have to like sing a song for the rest of the team. I think I sang
they do that in the NFL.
Yeah. I sang Forever by Drake. I had to sing the Little Wayne part. And I had to show up with I had like mascara drawn all over my face and to be like tattoos. It was hilarious. It was supposed to be I was Lil Wayne, someone else was Drake, someone else was there's no black.
We got the full paint of the story. We don't need to have the play-by-play here.
But it was just fun, and you just show up, and you're just meant to embarrass yourself and to have people and to laugh with people and to have a little personal growth and realize like it's not all that serious. You're just supposed to show up and have fun.
Would you say, and again, obviously, we're all Florida people here, we're raised here and all of that. Going to California is a big culture change, which is a big step out. For a lot of Florida kids, they don't make the journey, especially for athletics. You just see them go away for a little bit and they come back. I mean, what you went through, some of the kids at school, just a completely different experience.
Yeah, the culture shock of just like what the people, who everyone was, their backgrounds is so much more diverse than what I saw at Winter Park. I mean, Winter Park's a relatively big school. It's a big high school. My graduating class was like 850 or something. But I think Cal's one of the biggest schools in the country. It's like the same size as Michigan. It's got like 26,000 something students there. Yeah, everyone's from all over the world. There's international students everywhere. I think if you grow up a certain way and you grow up in a place like Winter Park, you're going to have I think you're almost certainly going to have a really tight viewpoint of the world and what you think everyone looks like, what you think everyone thinks, what their backgrounds are, and whether or not
ginger redheaded guy. That's what everybody looks like.
Yes, and whether or not you want to, you're going to learn what the rest of the world you're going to learn a little bit about what it means to not be home. And to be able to stick it out is huge. And I think a lot of guys will get a taste of that for a year or two. And, they all have their reasons for moving back. And for a lot of their reasons are legit. But at the end of the day, some of the reasons are just excuses for why they're leaving their school. But if you can stick it out,
job.
if you can stick it out, you can have a great time.
Absolutely, and that's what one of the knocks on, unfortunately, Florida lacrosse players, that I've heard over the last handful of years that my sons have gone through recruiting, is that the coaches are a little timid, especially the Northeast coaches. They're timid to recruit the Florida kids, not because they don't have the athleticism and the ability, but because they're worried they're going to not just be homesick, but they're just not going to like it because of the extreme cold. And we know kids that have gone up north, and they didn't make it. But then we've had kids that have gone up there and thrived. I mean, obviously, we've had Sergio here on the Garbage Goal podcast, and Sergio Salcido had great success in what I consider one of the most possibly miserable places in the world, in Syracuse, New York. I mean, only because it's so cold, not because it's like a bad place or whatever, but it's like, who wants to be in Syracuse, New York in January? I don't. I just don't. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's so there's something to be said about that, and it'll, it's just always going to be there. I mean, we see football kids that do the same thing in Central Florida. They go to Nebraska or go somewhere up north, and they hate it. They come back and end up at a lousy school like Florida State. But that's just the way it goes. We won't go there.
It's a real worry that I'm sure a lot of these coaches have, and I think it has to be founded in some truth. I know a ton of guys that I graduated with or around that moved back. I don't want to name any names, but there's a lot of guys that didn't wherever they wanted to go. But it's weather's part of it. It's you got to have it's a whole attitude shift.
Yeah.
So one other thing I wanted to ask you, talk a little bit about your World Cup experience playing for Luxembourg. All kidding aside, that's pretty awesome to have that experience. How did that come about? Because I've heard the similar story with other players that you've got that way. I'd love just tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was my sophomore year, my sophomore spring. My mom called me and she said, "Hey, how do you feel about playing in the World Cup over the summer?" I said, "You're kidding. This is a complete joke." She's like, "Have you ever heard of Luxembourg?" And I said, "No. What is Luxembourg?" They're like, "Well, they want to call you. They're going to call you in a couple hours. You should pick up."
The country of Luxembourg is calling you.
The country of Luxembourg, yeah. It was their
president.
Yeah, and also we should also clarify this. Nick's mom, for anyone, unless you were a Winter Park person, there's zero reason to understand her, or know her. But your son's lacrosse games, any lacrosse games with any ref that is anywhere on the field, had something to do with Tracy. She's the absolute best in the entire world. But finger on the pulse for every single ref, every game we've ever watched, she had something to do with off the field. So, anyways, to Luxembourg, the country calling you.
They called me because their goalie at the time, who was Luxembourgish, he broke his jaw.
He broke his jaw. Whoa.
He broke his jaw, had it wired shut. They were worried he wasn't going to play. The reason why they called me was because this guy named Ryland and his family were Luxembourg citizens. They grew up in the Villas. They grew up basically down the street from me. They were on the team. They called them like, "Hey, we can get an American goalie, but we need someone who isn't going to be like NCAA. We need someone who's at least club. And honestly, we need someone who's okay with losing." So for whatever reason, they decided to pick me. What they didn't know is I am not good with losing. But the thing is, I ended up going to Luxembourg. I spent a month there hanging with them. We get to the tournament eventually. There are 46 teams that competed in the World Cup. Luxembourg finished in 46th place. We are the only team in the world who lost every game. We lost to Uganda. We're the only team Uganda's ever beat. It was insane.
Oh man, that's such a
So,
great story.
I think the
That's
one question everybody
amazing.
has is, are you a Luxembourgian?
No, I was gonna say
I have no relationship.
I was gonna say a group of people from Luxembourg are Luxembourgi. Is that what it'd
A
be? Like a Luxembourgi?
Burgie?
I
I don't
think
know.
I should know.
Well, well, let's shift back to the club thing because Nick, I want you to touch on this because I think there's probably a parent or a player listening or even a coach right now that needs to hear this. So speak to hypothetically speak to the kid that's say is a Division 2, Division 3 player who's getting some recognition, maybe a Division 1 school kind of like yours has reached out, nothing serious. They're not going to be a top tier kid, the top 10% that's going to get picked off by the big schools. And they're teetering between, hey, do I go to XYZ D2 school in Podunk nowhere, or do I possibly go to UCF and play? And there's the money aspects of it. Do I go to FSU? Do I go to UGA because I can get in there? Whatever it is, speak to that. Speak to that perspective of that kid
Yeah,
from your experience.
yeah, I can speak really closely to that perspective. I think the other also to give a sort of a wider range of what I was considering. I was considering uh, in high school before Cal. I was considering maybe applying to Maryland and like walking on there. I don't know if I would have made it. Probably not. But it was either Maryland or whatever. And I was always deciding between club or NCAA. And I think it's a really, really hard decision for any high school boy to make, any high schooler to make. Because I think what it requires a really tough look at yourself, a really tough look in the mirror. You gotta try to get at why you want to play college lacrosse. Do you want to play college lacrosse because you want to be able to put on your Instagram bio or tell your friends that you play D1, you play D2, D3? Do you want to play college lacrosse because you want to coach lacrosse, because you want lacrosse to be your whole life and you want the best resume builder you can, which is to go to the most storied and most reputable program you can? Do you want to just have fun with your friends? Do you want to just go around with your friends? And if you want to do that, you got to have some other thoughts. Or do you want to just keep playing the game at all costs? You're like, I don't want to say goodbye to this game. You think about your senior season of high school. You're like, God, this is so fun. God, I just want to keep playing. How do I keep playing at some level? What you got to understand is if you're going to play college lacrosse, you got to play for the right reasons. It's a huge sacrifice. It's not at all like high school where you can just phone it in at school and then walk over to the field and phone it in there
What?
and get yelled at by Turner, get yelled at by Healy, and just screw around. You gotta your ability to show up in college to these practices and to these things away from home where you are in charge of everything is going to be one of the hardest transitions that any boy has to make. And if you're going to make it in a place like Podunk, New York, and you're going to make it being the 10th string D midi, if you're going to make it riding the bench for at least 2 years, does it mean that much to you? Does it mean that much to you to wait? Or do you want to just have fun? Do you want to play the game at some level? Because at the end of the day, the only person that's going to care about if you played at club or if you played at an NCAA program are your buddies that you graduated with, are your buddies at home. And they're only going to care about that for the first year or two. No one cares that I played club at Cal. All they care about is like, oh, you played a like true collegiate sport. Like that's crazy. Like
Yeah.
me playing at a collegiate sport at Cal got me into med school. It got me everywhere. It's a huge resume builder for me. And just that's just the professional side of it. The personal side of it is it got me to like come back and coach at Winter Park. It got me the opportunity to keep playing as much as I wanted to. It got me the opportunity to get really close to winning the big dance. It couldn't have been better for me, but not everyone's experience is going to be like mine. You got to figure out what's going to work for you.
Absolutely. And I think the first thing is you have to go to the school because you like the school, because the school offers you something that you want. Because the thing that
Great
just
point.
breaks my heart are the kids that commit to schools and you go, well, why are you going there? Oh, well, the coach recruited me is one of the only schools, it's like going, man, if the only reason you're going is to play lacrosse, you're gonna get burned out real quick. It's not gonna be fun, And then and then I think there's the two other aspects of it is like, do you want to play? Do you want to play? Like, do you want an opportunity to compete to actually play? Okay, like when my oldest son, when Garrett was at the Division I school he was at, they had 7 goalies one year, 7 goalies, and only one of them played the whole year, and he was a portal transfer from a top 5 Division I program. And he only transferred because he got a concussion and lost his job to another 5-star goalie who was, a year younger than him or whatever. So you have to pick it based upon, do you want to play? And I think the other part too is the kid that's like, hey, for example, I know we talk about a lot, but like, the Sergio Salcido, right? His dream was to play at Syracuse. He was going to do anything and everything to play at Syracuse. Whether he played or not, he was just going to wear that orange. That was all he wanted. And that's fine. Like, I have friends that have done the same thing. They've gone to a school, sat the bench in basketball, never played. They practiced for the team. They got the jersey. And forever, they can say, I played basketball at whatever, or lacrosse at. But, we got to, I think, open our minds in the lacrosse community a little bit more about the opportunity to club, how much fun it is, and how competitive it really is, and find the right fit instead of getting so hung up on like, oh, I got to go to UVA or I got to go to, Carolina or Virginia or Towson or whatever the school is, So I think there's a huge opportunity for people there to open their minds up a little bit.
Yeah, it's something you just gotta be honest with yourself, like you said. And the other interesting thing is if you're considering a club program and you don't know what their club program is going to be like, because like you've probably heard in this podcast, is every program is completely different. The culture's different. The time commitment's different. You can do something really simple and just email them or call them, or if you have a buddy at the school.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. A point for recruiting. If you're, again, a lot of people in Central Florida are either going to Florida State, they're going to Florida or UCF, right? And they're going to go there anyways. If you want to play on those teams, all you have to do is reach out. They're going to give you the tryout times. We had a bunch of Winter Park guys that went to Florida State. They all tried out for the team. It was super simple.
Honestly, like the most stoked lacrosse guy I've met in the last handful of years in Central Florida is a guy by the name of Dan Pfizer, who's helped coach club lacrosse here in Orlando. He played in Miami, played club lacrosse in Miami.
Yep.
He friggin' loved it. And the guys I know that have played at UCF, we've got boys that, we got the Gerber kid from Lake Howell playing at UF. One of my kids, Sweetlack's teammate, is one of the best players at UF this year playing. He's from South Florida. He had offers from good schools, but like, he wanted to go to UF. That was his dream school. He's playing club and he's freaking loving it.
It's a football school. It's a Southern school, right? That's what a lot of these people make those decisions. And also, we always talk about it. You want to live in a state where you're going to meet the same people. You're going to be able to network with all of that. And that's a lot of what you see these kids do. And to have the opportunity to play high level lacrosse in the state of Florida and not ride the bench for 2 to 3 years and have it be a business where they're recruiting over you, it's a great option.
And you can go to Cal and you can be friends with Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah. We'll see.
Or Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd too.
Or Marshawn Lynch.
Yes.
He's a legend.
Yeah. That's awesome.
The other key point I think that we sort of touched on earlier with club teams is, let's say you get to a program, you're a high school senior, you're like, okay, this seems like a good fit. Like, I talked to the coach, I talked to some players, I went and visited. Awesome. I want to go back. I want to visit. I want to go there. I want to play. And then you start thinking, oh, is the culture going to change? Is the team going to be different? Like, I don't know if I want to commit 4 years to this. The cool thing about club is you can become president. You can become one of the operators. You can start making decisions to make the team how you want it. At a certain point, if your coach is making y'all do stuff that you don't want to do, tell them to screw off. You can figure it out. It is your team. You have the opportunity to mold it how you want to. And if you want to kick ass and go for a national championship, you can. It might take a lot of work, but it's going to be work.
And that's a great point, because if you go to a school on the flip side of that too, and just say you go and play club. And we know a kid here in Central Florida that went to Florida State and had every intention of playing club. I think he might even played the first year, and he just didn't enjoy it and wanted to throw himself in full time to his fraternity and work a job and all that. And it's fine. Like it's like because if you go to a school, an NCAA school, and you've like gone there because you've been recruited to play lacrosse, and then you don't play, it's such an awkward transition, and you're stuck, and now maybe you're at a school you don't really want to be at, and now you got to transfer and all these things. So I just think the club lacrosse thing is just an amazing experience, a great opportunity. I hope it's something that more kids in Central Florida will take advantage of, because the truth matter is we're not going to see much more men's lacrosse, NCAA sanctioned men's lacrosse probably in our lifetime, just because of the money and Title IX stuff. So, it is what it is, but I love your perspective and your experience on everything, Nick. So we're super psyched and stoked that you joined us today and shared that with us. And, I'm sure we'll have you back on one time, and we'll talk more about goalie stuff and, taking shots into the thigh and the groin. So, and the pain of that, because I don't even know how you guys stand in there sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that's my worst nightmare, is get hit with a lacrosse ball right there near the baby maker. Like that's not fun. Nobody wants that. Come on now.
If you get hit in the calf, your whole leg's going to seize up.
Brooks doesn't want to play goal. My son doesn't want to play goal anymore because he got hit in the calf. That is legitimate. What he told me like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, really?
Yeah, it sucks. I don't really blame him. It's terrible. It doesn't feel good for way too long. It's a real problem.
Awesome.
Well, Nick, we appreciate you stopping in, man, and joining us. Where are you living at right now?
Cleveland.
Cleveland. Oh my goodness.
I was about to say, that's why us making fun of the weather in Orlando right now, that we feel dreary and tired. Yeah, he's in Cleveland.
Yeah, you said there was snow last week. I was trying to figure out where you were. It's 70 degrees here in Orlando, so we're struggling. Yeah. We're all pulling our lightweight windbreakers out, trying to stay warm.
And before we sign off, I just got to throw out the fun facts here. We've got, not only was he played in the smallest country in the world, he was also a sports owner for a short period of time of the Cal Bears lacrosse team.
Yes. That would be good on your LinkedIn profile. I think that sounds good.
Well, I would already be there. I was the owner of a college lacrosse team for one season.
That's so awesome. Well, Nick, thanks again, man. We appreciate it. Colin, I did want to let you know I brought the Traeger back to life. We talked about it last episode. Nice. I almost burnt my house down, but I have cleaned it. I have fixed it, and it is now working. So we can go ahead and cut off the GoFundMe account that I started. Yeah.
I think we're negative $30.
Yeah, I started it and I put it in your name, so people thought it was you instead of me. So, well, listen, everybody, thanks for joining us on the Garbage Goal podcast, powered by Orlando Lacrosse Report. Thanks, Nick Beatty, for joining us. For my co-host, Colin Turner and Patrick Moore. And as always, we will see you next time.
See y'all.